colleagues, friends, junior colleagues. Today, I would like to speak about my experiences in the lateral skull base surgery.
Sir, please go to full screen, sir. Full screen.
Full screen.
Yes.
Is it okay?
1 minute.
Is it okay, Dr. Sriharsha?
Yes, yes. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Base used to be no man's land. My journey through skull base, it is a very unique experience. About 1.5 decades ago and 2 decades ago, it is considered to be very inaccessible because it is surrounding by vital structures, and any pathology in the skull base will not be diagnosed until it reaches a very huge size. People used to have very, very pathetic existence with severe pain and problems because of the cranial nerves involvement. Whenever there was a malignancy in the ear, they used to do a modified radical mastectomy and then subject the individual for radiotherapy. We don't know whether the radiotherapist is aware or not. We all know after modified radical mastectomy or a radical mastectomy, there is a huge cavity which is a raw area. You know very well how a raw area, if it is irradiated, how it responds. Not only that, here the cartilage is involved. No amount of radiation, even in these days of linear accelerator, will cure the patient from the disease because of the involvement of cartilage. Slowly, certain techniques have developed and people started taking up skull base. If a jugular foramen syndrome arises, neither the otolaryngologist nor the neurosurgeon used to claim, and the poor man used to be subjected for radiation without any logic. Thanks for the developments, especially after the advent of infratemporal fossa approach of Professor Hugo Fisch of Zurich. Things have changed. Not only that, the development of anesthesiology, development of radiology in particular, and postoperative care, they have really helped phenomenally for advancement of this specialty. My aim of this particular talk is twofold. Number one, I would like to share my experiences with my beloved senior colleagues, and also my other aim is at least some people from the younger generation take up this particular specialty, subspecialty rather. We'll divide the talk into two portions. Number one as malignant lesions, number two as non-malignant lesions. And most common malignancy as far as the temporal bone is concerned, it is squamous cell carcinoma. I have experience of managing about 32 cases. Most of them are a T2 stage, and about 2 cases or 3 cases, they belong to T3 or T4, whereas only 1 case was T1. This T1 case was patient came with the complaint of ear discharge. There was a polypoid lesion inside, and I was very sure it's a case of atic cholecystoma. I operated and sent the polypus for the histopathology. It was reported as squamous cell carcinoma to my surprise. Patient subsequently underwent radiation and he is doing very well. She's doing very well. As per the modified Pittsburgh staging, if a tumor is confined to external artery canal only and there is no bony involvement at all or soft tissue involvement, it is considered as T1. Whereas in T2, there will be minimum bony involvement and minimal soft tissue involvement. In case of T3, there will be full involvement of the bony canal, and 0.5, less than 0.5 centimeter of involvement of the soft tissues. And beyond that, if tumor extends into the parotid or into the intracranium or into the, say, into the jugular foramen region or into the neck, everything it is considered as T4. Previously, this seventh nerve palsy used to be considered as T3. Now it is changed to T4. In the same way, any lymph node which is less than 3 millimeters in diameter is considered as N1, and beyond 3 millimeters up to 6 millimeters, it is considered as N2. Even the contralateral lymph node also, and anything beyond 6 millimeters is considered as N3. If the tumor is confined to external artery canal, as mentioned before, and it involves only the lateral aspect of the bony auditory canal, a partial resection of the temporal bone is enough. Whereas, if it extends beyond, extends to the middle ear, or into the deep lobe of parotid, or any mastoid or petrous, you should do a subtotal resection of the temporal bone. Total resection of the temporal bone has no oncological indication. This is the various levels. This is lateral to the tympanic membrane. This is just medial to the tympanic membrane, and this involves the cochlea also. How do we do it? We have to thoroughly evaluate the patient in view of the fitness and in view of the consent, and because it is a prolonged surgery, an efficient anesthesiologist, enough blood should be reserved, and various monitors also have to be put in place. Ideally, a temporal craniotomy has to be done, then a mastectomy, then a total parotidectomy, and then excision of the condyle of the mandible. Once you excise the condyle of the mandible, you have to drill the glenoid fossa after removal of the articulate cartilage. And if you drill it, you will find intratemporal carotid inside. And finally, the temporal bone is mobilized by controlled fractures without damaging the great vessels. Out of all these steps, this particular step, that is excision of the condyle and drilling of the glenoid fossa, is the single most important step. This is how we excise the condyle of the mandible. Then we can drill the glenoid fossa after removal of the articular cartilage. Now we can see the internal carotid artery just very close to the eustachian tube. Once you expose this, then the procedure is simple. We can very carefully do osteotomies throughout. And due to some unknown reasons, somehow my neurosurgeon colleagues, they were not accepting to do a temporal craniotomy, and we were all doing without this. And finally, now it is established there is no necessity for a temporal craniotomy. You can manage without it. This was the first case. This lady of aged about 60 years came with an ulcer in the extraordinary canal, which was quite extensive. She was having agonizing pain and blood stain discharge. She came to us. In the CT scan, we found the growth extending throughout the temporal bone, I mean, up to the petrous apex. And we have done a subtotal petrosectomy, including the pinna. And there was a huge defect. The defect is closed by means of pectoralis major myocutaneous flap harvested by my plastic surgeon colleague. This was another case. Here we could save the upper half of the pinna. Encircling the incision is given, and then an incision anterior extension, extending anteriorly, another posteriorly, and the third up to the neck. And subsequently, I happened to read an article by Professor Ram Mohan Tiwari. He has very ably described a modified end-oral approach. That means encircling incision inside with a superior extension and inferior extension into the neck. I found this incision very, very useful in these cases because there is no need for any pedicle flap after surgery. It can be approximated, even though the pinna is a little unsightly, still it is acceptable. This lady, it's an interesting case. She came with the severe pain in the ear, which is unexplained, in spite of best treatment with antibiotics and painkillers. Then we had a doubt and took a biopsy from the extraordinary canal, which reported as squamous cell carcinoma, and we did a CT scan also. Then there was a tumor suggesting the, extending into the middle ear cavity, and we did a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone for this lady, and subject followed by radiotherapy, and she was doing very well till recently. I don't know, very recently she is lost for follow-up. That means after, say, 10 years after follow-up. This gentleman, aged about 50 years, came with the complaint of pain in the ear, and we examined and seen a swelling in the ear, especially in the anterior canal wall, which we did a biopsy, reported adenocystic carcinoma. And on CT scan, it was quite early lesion, so we decided to do a partial temporal bone excision, and we requested our plastic surgeon colleague to camouflage the defect. Then he took a full thickness skin graft and camouflaged very successfully. Patient was doing very well. After 3 years, he came with recurrence. I did a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone this time, and again, patient was doing very well. He used to come for follow-up. Again, after 3 years, he came with a recurrence in the parotid. Then we excised the mass in the parotid, and it was same, that the adenocystic carcinoma, and he is lost for follow-up. I have seen recently a case of basal cell carcinoma. This lady came with a huge ulcer at the cost of the pinna, entire pinna, of about 6 to 8 months duration. She was under the cover of some RMP, and he was promising to treat her, and finally she landed at this stage. The biopsy was basal cell carcinoma, and CT scan was showing the mass extending into the middle ear cavity, and as per the oncological principles, we wanted to hit it hard. So about 1 centimeter of the normal margin is included, and a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone is done as per our normal protocol. These are the excised specimens, and this is the post-operative picture. And the defect this time is closed by the temporalis, the trapezius flap. This is very, very ideal flap based on the transverse cervical artery. Previously, our plastic surgeons, they showed a disinterest to use this particular flap, but of late, we use this flap by my colleague, plastic surgeon. It is very, very gratifying. Probably I may send her for an artificial auricle subsequently. Now the nomenclature is changed for a malignancy in the ear, nothing less than a lateral temporal bone resection should be done. If it is beyond the middle ear, involving the medial wall or beyond, you have to do what is known as extended temporal bone resection. This lady was about 40-45 years of age when we saw her. She was complaining of tinnitus in the ear and slight giddiness. On otoscopy, we found reddish discoloration in the inferior aspect of the tympanic membrane. On CT scan, we found a soft tissue lesion with respect to the jugular foramen. We made a diagnosis of glomus jugular tumor with infratemporal fossa approach. We excised the tumor, sent it for biopsy. This time we sent it to NIMHANS, and it was reported to our surprise as a case of papillary adenocarcinoma of endolymphatic sac origin. Patient is doing very well. We are subjected for radiation also, and she still comes for follow-up. Out of all these ear cancers, the male-female ratio was almost equal, and the average age being about 50 to 60 years. There is no definite history of otitis media or exposure to radiation, and no cervical lymph nodal involvement except in one case where we did an R&D. And there is no distant metastasis except in one case with lung metastasis. Patient is still on chemotherapy, and no case was presented with seventh nerve palsy, surprisingly, and all cases received post-operative radiation, and there is no intraoperative or post-operative complications except vertigo and slight vomiting. And the seventh nerve palsy and complete deafness are well explained preoperatively to the patient, and the disease-specific survival for 5 years is approximately about 50%. Now, the non-malignant lesions. The non-malignant lesions are all approached by infratemporal fossa approach. In infratemporal fossa approach, as described by Professor Fish, we take a large S-shaped incision post-auricularly, and we do an extended mastectomy, and we dissect the neck and identify the great vessels and place them up to the skull base and ligate the external carotid artery. Once you do a mastectomy here, identify the facial nerve and do the transposition anteriorly. Once you transpose the facial nerve anteriorly, there is no other vital structures left behind except the lateral sinus posteriorly and internal carotid artery anteriorly. Now identify the eustachian tubal opening, and just medial to the opening, if you carefully drill, you will find the internal carotid artery. Once you identify the internal carotid artery and internal jugular vein, the bone, the jugulocarotid septum in between these two can be removed by means of a Kerrison punch, and you can ligate the internal jugular vein downwards, internal jugular vein in the neck, and in the mastoid, we used to ligate it by taking a small incision on the dura on both sides. But now we do what is known as extra luminal compression by means of Surgicel. Just apply a good piece of Surgicel over the this medial wall of the lateral wall of the lateral sinus, along with the gel form. Sometimes even over that bone wax is also applied. So the entire jugular vein is under control, and we can very safely open the jugular bulb and remove the tumor. Only thing is the inferior petrosal sinus bleeds a little bit. Inferior petrosal sinus also can be blocked by means of Surgicel. And we have to do what is known as blind sac closure of the external canal and apply the wound may be camouflaged by means of a rotated temporalis muscle and abdominal fat. This elderly lady, about 10 years back, even more than 10 years ago, so about 15 years ago, she came with the complaint of severe pain in the ear and also a pinkish polypoidal lesion coming out of the external ear. Severe pain. It was referred by one of my former teachers, and with the polypus and the female sex in mind, I made a provisional diagnosis of glomus jugulare tumor, and immediately a CT scan has been done. The CT scan showed extensive lesion extending from the external canal into the middle ear cavity, into the mastoid, beyond mastoid, even up to the CP angle lesion, CP angle region. Then we subjected for embolization. To our great surprise, after embolization, when we opened the wound, the almost entire tumor disappeared, and there was a little bit behind, left behind. We excised it and sent for histopathology. It was reported as neuroma. And retrospectively, when we thought of her past history, there was a fine scar in relation to the parotid gland, and she underwent parotoidectomy about 5 years before. The histopathology was not known, and we made a diagnosis of facial neuroma. She's doing very well now. She comes for follow-up now. This is another case of neuroma. This has been done in 2005 by the neurosurgery department. They have excised it, and they have confirmed it as neuroma, probably from the facial nerve. Now she came with recurrence, and you can see the X-rays, the CT scan, the MRI. There is a tumor in relation to the temporal bone, and I did a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone. This was referred by an oncologist, a surgical oncologist, and this is the post-operative picture. Coming to glomus jugulare tumor, I did about 3 cases, 4 or 5 cases I did, but I personally I'm involved in these 3 cases. This was the first case. She came with a pinkish polypoidal swelling in the ear. Somebody did a biopsy, and she was bleeding like anything. And luckily they could pack the ear, and hemostasis could be secured. When we did a CT scan, there was a mass in the jugular foramen region, and we did a, it was confined to the middle ear cavity. So we decided to operate with the infratemporal foci approach again of Professor Hugo Fish with facial nerve transposition. This is the post-operative picture. The patient is able to, the patient is having some nasolabial groove, and It is about grade 2 to grade 3 HB Hausbergman grade D in the immediate post-operative period. Subsequently, she has totally recovered. This is the excised specimen. And this young person of aged about 30 years, he also had a swelling in the pinkish swelling in the ear. Once again, it was biopsied with severe bleeding. And then he came to us. We did a CT scan with contrast. There is a mass in relation to the jugular foramen extending into the mastoid and the tympanic cavity. It is also a case of type B tumor. It is a type B tumor. As per Professor Fish classification, and we have subjected for embolization. On embolization, the tumor has blanched so much, and in spite of these blanching, the tumor was very, very angry looking and pulsating. We did a mastectomy. After that, we raised the tympanomeatal flap carefully. You see, the tumor is very, very much pulsating, and by bipolar coagulation, we have excised the tumor in toto, but the only problem was it was involving the facial layer. So we could not save the facial layer. He comes for follow-up, and we plan for reanimation of his face. He's doing quite well. We did a case of subtotal petrosectomy. It was a case of CSF autoria secondary to postoperative vestibular neuroma surgery by retrosigmoid approach. This was the old scar. The neurosurgeon wanted me to operate. I did a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone, extended mastectomy I did, and removed the entire tympanic membrane and ossicles, and done the blind sac closure of the external ear, and blocked the eustachian tube by means of muzzle and a bone wax. A very unfortunate lady, she had a vestibular schwannoma on this side. There is another schwannoma on that side, this side also with total deafness. This side she was subjected for Gamma knife. She knows she's having profound bilateral sensory neural hearing loss, which cannot be assisted by any hearing aid, and even cochlear implantation also is of no use. We advised her for ABI, auditory brainstem implant. This was the tumor in the C angle region, and also here. This was a case of giant cholestoma, a case of giant cholestoma we encountered. This person, aged about 60 years, he came with the discharge from the ear, which is foul smelling. My colleague, who is a very efficient surgeon, he did the operation and he removed the cholestoma very successfully. But unfortunately, patient developed facial paralysis, and then wound up, post-operative, post-auricular wound refused to heal. When we did a CT scan, to our horror, we have seen a huge cholestoma at the cost of the entire temporal bone. The cholestoma is extending medially up to the second cervical atlas, first cervical vertebra, and also into the anteriorly into the zygomatic region and the infratemporal fossa, and going down almost up to the neck. There was a small fistula formation in the zygomatic region. We were really a little bit afraid to take up this case, but somehow we could, we applied the skull-based principles, and by infratemporal fossa approach, we were able to remove the entire cholesteatoma, very huge cholesteatoma, and patient is doing very well. This was the post-operative case. We have even published this case in one of the journals, and ultimately, I have a few points to impress upon. The skull-based surgery is part and parcel of otolaryngology. You cannot escape without handling these cases, and we should have high index of suspicion so that we can diagnose these lesions early. Whenever there is a unresponding otitis media, or whenever there is unexplained symptoms, you please have this in mind and evaluate thoroughly, especially by our latest imaging modalities, MRI, CT scan, with contrast, without contrast, MRI angiograms. It is really wonderful to have our radiologist services, and we can consider preoperative embolization as and when necessary, and multidisciplinary approach is key to the satisfactory results. And it is high time we have to start a hybrid course on skull base for both otolaryngologists and neurosurgeons. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for an excellent presentation of all your experiences in various skull-based cases. I would throw open the session to all the participants. They can directly interact with the professor and get your doubts cleared.
Thank you, Dr. Sriharshan.
Yes, sir. Sir, meanwhile, if while participants get your questions, how many cases have you done with neck extension, sir, and glomus jugular?
These cases, you know very well, they are not very common. Once in a while they come. In fact, we had a very advanced case we were planning. Luckily at the time, Mannion has come.
Yes.
So we utilized his services and he did that surgery. That is why I have not included that case in my series. That was the only case. The other cases were limited to jugular foramen.
Okay.
Two cases were jugular tympanicum, whereas other case was type B tumor.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Good evening, sir. I am Dr.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Kishore.
Yeah, very nice presentation, sir. Very nicely you have enlightened us all aspects of this. Almost all the lesions are related to the lateral skull base are very well covered, sir. I find it very useful for us. Only I would like to know, sir, when you come across the lateral sinus, the lateral sigmoid spinal in your way, how will you deal with that, sir? What are the methods of
How do we?
deal with that? You want to
Bleeding from lateral sinus.
lateral sinus.
Okay, wonderful question Professor Kishore has asked. This is an important question, and this is useful for all of us. Now, we are not afraid of bleeding from lateral sinus anymore. When we were youngsters, it was a nightmare to do any mastoid surgery. We never undertake mastoid surgery without bone wax. It was the case at that time. Now, we know how to deal with the bleeding. First and foremost, we should not be panicky. Apply firm pressure. Wait for a little while, or ask one of our assistants to hold it tightly. If the bleeding is not very severe, you can proceed. But after some time, you can remove the pack and see. If the bleeding still continues, Surgicel is an excellent option. Surgicel with a little gel form, if you can pack it, and over that again, you apply some gauze pack and pressure, invariably it will stop. If Surgicel is not available, a piece of muzzle is an excellent option that also will stop the bleeding very, very effectively. Thank you for asking this question.
Nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello.
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 Sir, I am Dr. Bhaskar speaking.
Hello, Dr. Bhaskar.
You told that you are using dithermy.
Yes.
And another thing is your approach lateral skull base, whether you went behind the sigmoid sinus or pre-sigmoid sinus or a post-sigmoid sinus.
No, I have no experience about retrosigmoid surgery. All our cases, they were done by infratemporal fossa approach, that is anterior to the lateral sinus.
Okay.
Mastoid surgery.
Okay, sir.
Sigmoid approach I have never done.
No, pre-sigmoid approach you have not gone. You have not gone through the pre-sigmoid approach.
Pre-sigmoid approach, not retrosigmoid.
That is, the sac is being pushed out and they approach pre-sigmoid. The sac.
I didn't understand. Come again.
The sac, sir. Sac. Labyrinth, the sac which is there in the mastoid, below the mastoid, that is the Donald's line, below the Donald's line. We remove that sac anteriorly, we'll push it anteriorly and enter into the skull base for any of the nerves, because by microscope it is with two hands you can approach. Therefore, it is easy that because of the two hands, his approach is there. Pre-sigmoid approach will be more better because it is nearer.
Yes, what we are doing is pre-sigmoid approach, isn't it?
That's what I'm telling you. That's what I asked you, whether you went through pre-sigmoid approach.
Pre-sigmoid only. Not behind, not retrosigmoid, I have told you. Pre-sigmoid approach only, we approach and we delineate the sigmoid sinus and we make a small bony window so that we can occlude it extraluminally, superiorly.
Yes, sir.
And inferiorly, interjugular vein can be ligated.
Okay, sir. What about this dithermy? You told where you used this dithermy?
Dithermy for the tumor proper.
Okay.
For the tumor proper, as you have seen in the video, the tumor is pulsating.
Yes, sir.
And carefully we coagulated with bipolar and removed the tumor.
Sir.
In spite of occluding the
Sir, if there is secondaries in the neck, in the same approach, suppose there is secondaries in the neck, would you extend the incision and do in the same sitting, or you will wait for some time?
No, there is no need. This incision is one side. You can address the lesion in the neck also.
Yes.
In glomerular tumor, you don't expect any secondaries.
No, not in that. I'm telling.
Yes. In case of temporal bone malignancy, yes. There was one case where I have taken help of my surgical oncologist colleague, and he did it for me for the radical neck dissection.
That's what I'm asking. The same sitting you do it.
Same sitting, yes. Same
Whether
sitting.
you do berry picking or at that time. So because of
No berry picking, no berry picking.
Radical. You went for
So
radical.
yes,
No.
yes.
Because I am telling is, suppose it is a long surgery, and you find only less lymph nodes, then you just remove it or you go for a radical.
See, ideal thing is send the node for frozen section.
Okay.
If it is positive, you have to go ahead with radical neck dissection. There is no other short circuit. This surgery is
Do it for
a conglomeration of group of surgeries.
Okay, sir. I do agree with you, but suppose the age of the patient, that has to be considered, no, when you want to go for a radical surgery.
Correct. But luckily, our anesthesiologists are so efficient, and now the parameters, now all the equipment which can monitor the patient's general condition, blood transfusions, or the end carbon dioxide monitor, everything they are extremely in state of art, and we can efficiently do it. One of the reasons why we are able to do all this is because of our anesthesiologist colleagues.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your experience and your,
thank you very much, Dr. Bhaskaran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Masharu.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. Dr. Nageswara, sir. Visakhapatnam.
Like Nageswara, good evening. Chappandi.
Sir, good evening, Dr. Krishna Kishore garu also, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you told that for the lateral sinus bleeding, we can pack with the Abgel.
Surgicel. Main is Surgicel.
Yes, sir. And a temporalis muscle also.
Pardon?
Temporalis muscle also we can put that to pack.
Yes.
But we told again the Abgel also.
No. What I mean to say, Surgicel, very thin layer, isn't it? So, you can take a piece of gel foam and drape it with Surgicel and pack it.
Yes, sir.
It works wonderfully.
Yes, sir. But this only Abgel pieces we should not use, sir, because they emboli into the brain.
We can use, but only gel foam Abgel will not help.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for a wonderful lecture,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
Namaste, sir. Thank you, sir.
Namaste.
Sir, there are two more questions, sir.
Please.
Dr. Kamal was asking, what about neck dissection with squamous cell carcinoma? What about the fashion of sacrifice and reconstruction issue?
Somehow, the neck involvement is not there in my case series. As I have told just now, only one case, it was a positive neck and a radical neck dissection has been done. And when there is a neck involvement, the condition, the prognosis is comparatively poor. When the neck is involved, neck nodes are palpable, and if it is N2 or N3, that means it is an advanced lesion. The prognosis is definitely a little bit guarded. Coming to the facial layer, it is totally, it is accepted by the patient, because if we don't operate, anyway the disease will knock out the facial layer. There is no hearing at all, and you can plan reanimation, that is lid loading you can do. Gold plate you can introduce into the upper eyelid, which will help very well for orbicularis action. For the orbicularis oris action, I think we have to plan for a temporalis muscle sling or any facial hypoglossal anastomosis. I wanted to do facial hypoglossal anastomosis, but for the paucity of time, because the neck is readily available in front of you, hypoglossal nerve is seen, and the stump, the facial nerve stump is there. It is very easy to unite them. But for the paucity of time, I could not do so far. It's a very good thing to do a facial hypoglossal anastomosis.
So can you explain a little more about facial nerve rerouting?
Facial nerve rerouting. You mean transposition?
Yeah.
You mean transposition?
Yes.
The facial nerve, it can be totally skeletonized from the region of the genu up to the stylomastoid foramen. Totally you skeletonize it and lift it from the groove. You lift it from the groove and push it anteriorly beyond the middle ear cavity, almost touching the anterior wall of the middle ear cavity. Almost at the level of the parotid region, you can apply a small stitch also there. Once you rerouted it anteriorly, then the entire field is very clear now. You have to take care of the lateral sinus behind and take care of the internal carotid artery anteriorly. That's all. You can drill out the whole bone and you will be directly on the tumor. And in the same way, for the forolateral approaches and all, Professor Mario-san describes posterior transposition. That is, you will sacrifice the GSPN, greater superficial petrocell nerve, and the entire nerve he will lift and lift behind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we have come to the end of the Q&A session. We have a lot of congratulatory messages.
Okay.
Sir, thank you, sir, for an excellent presentation. You have shared with us very rare tumors which are rarely discussed in conferences and webinars. I hope most of the participants have benefited with your experiences in dealing with these tumors. Thank you, and we'll end the webinar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sriharsha. Once again, I thank all the participants who have actively participated and the program a success. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.